Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Lovell Netball. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 3 of Qtr Time. It's been another big week in the world of netball with a doubleheader weekend, 9 games across 4 days, Lucy. I really struggle to keep up.
I can never remember who's played. I have to keep checking the website. Honestly, all the visitors to this website is probably just me refreshing it and checking it each day.
Honestly, though, it's the truth. It's so hard to keep up. But yeah, it's been a huge week. So what have we got coming up on the episode today, Luce?
So today we'll be giving our 3-word summaries of rounds 2 and 3 of the Netball Super League and highlighting our game of the round and our player of the round. And then there is the small matter of our guest interview for this week. I mean, I don't know if all the listeners will have heard of this person. It's only Tracey Neville, guys. Oh my God. So the former England Roses head coach will be chatting to her about her career so far in coaching and just everything, Luce. It's really good. I'm really excited about this interview.
Yeah, I'm possibly the most excited about this out of all the interviews. It's definitely top 3 for me in terms of my excitement levels.
Yeah.
But before that, let's get stuck into round 2 and 3 of the Super League of our 3-word summary. So first up for round 2, it was a big win for Pulse versus Bath, 72-42. And I've been quite clever with my 3-word summary this week. Obviously, I'm sure everyone's seen the hashtag get some net. So my 3-word summary is got some net. I think it's safe to say that London Pulse got some serious net in this game with their highest ever Netball Super League score and only 2 missed shots in the entire match. I think Berry Neal, she's now had 2 games on the bounce at 100% shooting. So she is just going out there being a queen. Whereas for Bath, on the other hand, they really suffered at the post in this game. They had 77% shooting accuracy overall, with 6 times as many missed shots as Pulse, who, as I mentioned, only missed the 2. They were also heavily penalised with 62 penalties to Pulse's 45. So just need to tidy that up and make some improvements going into round 4.
Yeah, this was a big game, actually, and great crowd at the Copper Box Arena for this one. And I think it was the first time we've seen Pulse be extremely dominant this season and really just put their foot down. So great to see.
Yeah.
Next up on Saturday was Mavs versus Rhinos, with Mavs taking the win 62-57. And I said, Mavs are back. Try as they might, Rhinos just couldn't quite get over the line against Mavs, but they did put up a decent fight. Every quarter was really hotly contested. The biggest quarter score margin was only 3 goals. It was actually the unforced errors that let Rhinos down in this game, with 14 compared to Mavs' 6. But their shooting was on point. Only 1 miss the whole game.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Not too shabby. Only the 1 miss. Following this, oh man, what a game. Storm versus Thunder, with Storm coming out on top 56-49. And I've gone for, very unoriginally, storming the opposition.
See what you did there, Luce? Good one.
So clever. I'm on fire today. I mean, what an incredible game to be treated to. This was amazing. From the off, I think Storm had Thunder's number in every position on court. And for me, Gusker, Flanagan and Knight in particular just played a blinder. They were absolutely on fire. Thunder really unusually just had no answers to Storm's defensive dominance, and they were forced to ring in more changes in this game than I remember seeing in recent matches. It was really unusual. But that being said, I think this loss for Thunder is going to make the Thunder Pulse game so spicy. I cannot wait.
Yeah, like they're not going to want to be going from an undefeated season to 2 losses on the bounce. So yeah, definitely going to be good. What Spice Fest. Next was Lightning versus Dragons, which was 65-51 in favour of the Lightning. And I said a valiant effort. Stats from this game make it sound like a battle of the goalkeepers. Shaquanda Green-Knoll was all over the place. 2 rebounds, 5 intercepts, 4 deflections, and 10 turnovers. 19 penalties, though. Anne Harvey, 4 rebounds, 2 intercepts, 5 deflections, 10 turnovers, and 22 penalties. It must have been a really fantastic game to watch. For Lightning, it was a major milestone for Hannah Joseph, getting a 150th cap. Amazing. Nice. And Fran Williams had one of her best ever games, apparently, and they got all 12 out on court. Dragons started and ended the game well, but couldn't put the same level of performance in quarter 2 and quarter 3, which they lost by 9 and 8 goals, respectively.
Yeah, still not a bad showing from them, I think.
Yep.
Following this was Stars versus Sirens, with Sirens getting their first win of the season, 60-51. And I've gone for Africa Stand Tall.
Nice.
It was another cracking game in this round, and we really saw how the injection of new players, whether they were planned or through injury or whatever, can really make or break a team's performance. Stella Royella came on and shot 15 from 16 and just absolutely tore up that attacking end. She just pulled those defenders apart, and Sirens were able to capitalise on a seemingly endless amount of turnovers from Vinkumbo at the back. The injury to Rebecca Airy in quarter 3 did seem to have quite a big impact for Stars, and despite them leading at 3/4 time, they kind of just crumpled really towards the end. And actually in the last 9 minutes of the game, the score was 4-11 in favour of Sirens, so a huge impact of her not being on court.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I thought this was an interesting game. I think maybe when we see them again play each other later on in the season, it could be a closer battle as well. So looking forward to that one. Next up on Sunday was Rhinos versus Storm, with Storm taking the win 66-48. And for this one, I said capitalise on errors. Storm came out strong in this game and had a commanding lead at halftime after a 21-7 second quarter. Oof. Just too many unforced errors for Rhinos. They had 15, and although they did pick up some ball defensively, they just couldn't quite make their connections fire in attack. In contrast, Storm continue their unbeaten run this season, with SDL putting up 30 from 31 with 14 feeds. So a pretty excellent day at the office for her.
That's an outrageous day at the office for a goal attack.
I know.
Jesus.
It's like she's playing goal attack and wing attack in one.
Right? That's mental. Wow, good going her. First up on Monday was Pulse versus Stars, which you had the pleasure of hosting, but that was fun. And Pulse took the win at 63-50. And I've gone for a bit scrappy. Pulse really came out firing, but then just let Stars come back into the game. And I think it was probably a bit of a closer scoreline than what Pulse would have liked, because Stars only lost the second half by 2 goals. So they did well to really keep in it. It was quite a niggly game. There was a couple of cautions and warnings for Stars, and Stars actually ended up on 66 penalties compared to Pulse's 38. I think it was important for Pulse to back up their win against Bath with another win, but I'm predicting that Stars are going to trip up another team this season like they did in to Mavericks in round 1. Like you can feel it coming. It is coming.
Yeah,
they're going to do it.
It just needs it all to click together on one day, because actually individually they've got some really good stuff going on, but it's making it all happen at the same time. So I think we will see it, but later on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Next up then, on to Dragons versus Bath, which was a corker of a game. Dragons taking the win 54-45. And for this one, my 3-word summary is fire trumps water.
Nice. See what you did there.
Kind of elemental. Loving that. This was such an exciting game, and Dragons recorded their first win of the season and their first win over Bath since 2014.
Wowza.
Yeah.
That's
I was
impressive.
doing my A-levels.
Oh,
sorry, Luce.
Get out. Oh, God.
Moving swiftly on. The stats are fairly even for this game, which kind of just shows how tightly contested it was, except for the penalties. Bath clocked up 50 penalties more than Dragons. Just repeating that, 50 penalties more than Dragons, 82-32.
That can't. Really?
Yeah. That's what the stats say. I mean, there obviously it could be an error or something, but there were a lot of penalties handed out in this game, a lot of people on cautions, And to be honest, both teams struggled with consistency and there was a lot of swings in momentum. But there were a few standout players. I think Sophie Kelly and Pekova for Bath were on point. And Hannah Layton, Ella Powell-Davis and Rudland for Dragons just absolutely smashed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually, just looking at that penalty breakdown. Like, you can, it seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but you can actually see that it could well be correct. Like,
yeah,
you know, Lily Mae Catlin had 22, which is a lot for a goal defence. Pekova had 19. Arlie Wilshire with 14, which seems unusual. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's just how the game went. How interesting.
Yeah, I think it was a pride thing for Bath in that game. You know, it's a proud club with a history, 5-time champions, haven't lost a dragon since 2014, like we mentioned. I think that was a game that they really did not want to lose. And so they were putting everything on the line. Yeah,
well, let's look forward to the rematch. I'm excited already.
Defo.
And final game of round 3 then was Sirens versus Lightning, with Lightning coming out on top 63-42. And I've gone for under the radar. Lightning are unbeaten so far in 2023. Only one of three teams?
3 teams.
Only one of 3 teams to be unbeaten. And there are some really impressive stats actually to come out of this game. Fran Williams had 3 rebounds, 7 intercepts, 4 deflections, and 11 turnovers. She was just on fire this round, like both of these rounds. Everyone from Lightning was just really going about their business. And this is the sort of scoreline that I think you'd expect Lightning to take. Sirens, on the other hand, just weren't getting much hand to ball, and they kind of trailed in all of the defensive stats and had 11 missed shots, which put them on a 79% shooting percentage. Whereas Lightning were able to score much more quickly through Chollock, who put up a whopping 49 goals.
Yeah, it was just that route to goal, really, I think was just probably a bit easier for the Lightning. But yeah, really good round. Oh, well, a couple of rounds, actually, a bit of a bumper weekend. So, Luce, talk us through our game of the round for this week.
Well, it will come as a surprise to a grand total of 0 people that the game of the round this week was Storm versus Thunder. I mean, wow, like, to be the team that ends Thunder's unbeaten run, what a badge of honor. Like, that's amazing, so impressive. I think if we start off looking at Storm, Guska for me was just on an absolute mad one. She had 3 intercepts, 10 deflections, 9 turnovers. And actually, yes, Guska was incredible, but I think the combination with Flanagan out in front of her and Knight is behind her, that trio was a real standout for me. And I actually think, you know, I love Mickey Austin. I think she's a really tenacious centre, but she had 6 unforced errors on her own in this game, which is almost the same as Thunder as an entire team. They had 7. So wow. I think Storm were almost a little bit lucky to win this when you sort of take that into consideration. And, you know, I've mentioned Flanagan already, but she's looking so good this season, in fact, that she's currently the only non-circle defender in the top 10 for turnovers and intercepts in the league so far. Like, that's incredible. That's so she's
amazing.
Right? She's looking so fiery. But overall, it was quite a lot of whistle in this game. It was 65 penalties for Storm and 74 for Thunder.
Wow.
And if we take a little bit of a look at Thunder now, I think what stood out for me was that Kerry Almond, I think, looked visibly frustrated. And I think this was actually reflected in her penalty count. She had 22, which is one of the highest, if not the highest. I think Metcalf was almost invisible. I didn't really notice her all game. They just had no answers, and they were forced into making a number of changes to try and combat Storm. The only thing I will say, though, is that I thought Shadeen van der Merwe was a real standout for them. She had 2 intercepts, 9 deflections, 5 turnovers, and I'd say she was probably best on court for Thunder, but overall, they just really struggled.
Yeah, well, I mean, Metcalf invisible, who was she playing against?
Exactly.
Amy Flanagan, who to me, she plays like an Ash Brazel, in my view. That would be probably the closest comparison I could pull, which is, you know, pretty good from Amy Flanagan's perspective to be compared to someone like Ash Brazel.
I mean, compare me to a Braz any day of the week.
Any day.
My year.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I agree with you on all counts. I think it was interesting. Karen Gregg, after the game, she said something like, every time we got ourselves back within 2, we did something stupid. And I think we're seeing that this is a turnover of Thunder's team. We've seen a lot of changes. They don't necessarily have those connections, those experienced heads throughout, and they're building. Whereas Storm, like Tamsin said in the first episode, you know what you're going to get. They're going to execute. They're going to put it out there. So yeah, very, very interesting game, actually. Very interesting. With this game in mind, Luce, Thunder in your final or not in your final?
I don't think they'll be in the final. I don't think they'll make final. I think they'll still be top 4.
Yeah.
It's so hard to say. I mean, at the moment, it's looking likely to me that it would be a Lightning Storm final.
Yeah.
But then again, Pulse, like,
it's such early days as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, probably too early.
We love to call it early, though, don't we?
And then if you're me, change your mind every single week until you get to the final.
And also, like, how wrong was I about Rhinos? You know, when I was saying they're going to come out, they're currently 0 from 3. So that was poor by me. But long season to go. Anything could happen.
Yeah, for sure. So, Luce, who have we gone for player of the round?
So this was actually really hard this week because I think there were quite a lot of players who did extremely well for their respective sides in either one of their games that they played or one and a bit. So we've actually gone for Shaquanda Green-Noel in this one, and she had a cracking game, like we mentioned, some of those stats up against Lightning, bearing in mind that is actually up against Mary Chollock.
Yeah.
And then she backed that up with 3 intercepts, 3 deflections, and 6 turnovers in the win against Team Bath. And the biggest thing for me is just the energy and the lift that she brings to that whole team around her. Yeah. And not only that, she's also starting to build a reputation as a player who you really don't want to come up against. She has that presence in the circle that's so effective, both how she physically works around the body, you know, to deny space and confuse the space for the feeders, but also how she gets into the mind of her opponent. So she's really good at playing those mind games. And there's tactics in it, you know, all the celebrations and everything. Obviously she's passionate, but also she knows that that's riling up her opposition, because that is the worst thing. If you just coughed up possession and then the other team going, great pressure, amazing, yes, good, then you know, you feel instantly you're rattled, and that's just so valuable for the side. And really excited to see how she continues to develop that partnership, whether that's with Ella Powell-Davies or with Roddy. That whole kind of unit for Dragons defensively are proving very effective so far.
Yeah, I mean, I am loving that defensive trio. I probably would swap Roddy and Ella, if I'm honest. I would probably start off. Yeah, Ella Powell-Davies is in, like, when she's in the circle, that is her, like, happy place for me. I think that's where she really
but I don't know, because I think it's a Karen Berger thing that actually, if you put her out in wing defense, like Bath tried 2 wing attacks on her and nobody could do anything about her. She was just all over it. And so I would say that maybe coming up against different opponents is when you would maybe do that switch.
Yeah, but I like, regardless of who they've got in the circle with Shaquanda, like, it's really coming up trumps and it's paying off. And like, I completely agree regarding the psychological side of things, because you can see
psychological warfare.
Literally, like, Betsy was getting so annoyed, like you could see it on her face, and there was
as you would, as anyone would. Yeah, exactly. I 100%. Saw that as well, and that's great as well. It's great for the crowd, people watching at home. Like, you want to see that. It's a bit like Sterling effect as well. She likes to have a bit of argy-bargy, as Michelle Fippard would call it.
Although we haven't seen a finger in the face yet from Shaquanda. That's a Sterling classic, but
still time. Yeah.
But like, what I love about Shaquanda is her, because at times they were really pinging that ball in, like, fast and furious into Betsy, but then she was able to identify that on court, and after sort of 3 or 4 goals, she adjusted so quickly, and it was really effective. So her ability to read the play and see what's happening and adjust in real time, not having to wait until a quarter time to get coached through it, like, it's really, really impressive. Absolutely love her.
For sure. Such a smart player, for sure.
Yeah, defo. So coming up next, we hear from former England Roses head coach. It's Tracey Neville for our first coaching profile of 2023. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready.
I don't know about you, Luce, but it gets to this point in the season and all I'm thinking about is getting new trainers. You know, when you're just eyeing them up all the way through, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I love a bit of new stash, but I'm the type of person, I'll put all of these things into my basket, spend hours and hours looking around, but then I'll never actually go through with it. It just sits in my basket forevermore.
It's so true. I know, honestly, can relate. But luckily, Lovell Netball are offering a 15% discount on all first-time orders with code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk. So you're sorted.
Yeah, and honestly, Lovell Netball is the place to go. Whatever you want, they've got absolutely everything.
Everything. Such a good range. Yeah.
So whether you're looking for trainers, you're looking for bibs, you're looking for supports, whatever you need.
Sports bras, all of that stuff.
Sports bras, exactly. They have got you covered. So don't forget, that's a 15% discount off all first-time orders with the code NETPOD15 at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Love a bit of Lovell. Oh my God.
Love a bit of Lovell.
Love a bit of Lovell. Happy shopping, guys.
It is such a pleasure to be able to welcome onto the podcast Tracey Neville MBE. How are you doing, Trace?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No,
thanks for fitting me in.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. We've wanted to have you on since day one of the podcast, haven't we, Luce? And we've finally managed to get you on. So.
I know. I keep getting these emails soon. I'm like, oh no, I'm travelling here.
You're a busy lady,
I'm
Tracey.
Get on, guys, before I go to Australia.
No, you are a very busy lady, and you are, I think it's fair to say, a legend of English netball, and you've achieved things to the roses that literally no one else has done so far. So we wanted to take this opportunity to look at your coaching journey and the influences that have shaped you into the coach that you are today. So to start off, if we take it back to your early days and if we take a look at your family, most people will of course know that your brothers, Phil and Gary Neville, are both former England and Manchester United footballers. So growing up in a sporting family, did you ever feel like there was this expectation of success because of how successful your brothers were?
No, not really. I always say this. I never really noticed that there was a difference in sporting achievements or experiences between male and females until probably about the age of 14. I think my mum and dad were really good at keeping us grounded, creating opportunity for us. So at the age of 14, when I was potentially choosing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life at university, GCSEs, so on, Gary and Phil were making really tough decisions on whether they played cricket or football, and also whether they took up the apprentice contract with Manchester United. So that's probably the only time I really noticed a difference. I obviously know that football was more visual. It was on our telly the whole of the time. Do I think about ambassadors around that particular period? I probably followed a lot more of tennis. Like I used to love Steffi Graf. But I think the role models that we had were in our mum and dad, really, because they were, really into sport. And they were the ones who we went along, we picked up cricket bats, we picked up balls, we picked up the next bib. So I think for us, we were very fortunate that our mum and dad led the way for us. And that created really grounded international stars, really, if you like to call us that.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can call yourselves anything but, like, it's undeniable. You are international stars. But I think that's so lovely that you had that encouragement from your parents from such an early age, and the realization that actually sport can play such a huge part in a person's personal development. Did you feel like there was much influence growing up of being part of such a high performance family? Did that impact your coaching at all?
It's so easy to look at mine, Philip and Gary, and go, were they trophy parents? Did they want to live through their children? And it just never was like that. Sport was so natural to us. If I think about how we all had different paths, even though we sort of followed the same international track. We actually reached into, we got into the England team at the same time. Our caps are very, very similar. It didn't feel at any point that we were being pressured, because my progression just come from playing in a local rounders team, and one of the girls who I used to play with was at a local netball club. So although I went and followed my mum who played netball at the time, that's how my introduction into club netball came. And then from there, the girl who played goal attack in my local club team, she then was the town team coach, and then she took me to the town team, and it was there that my next coach picked me up, and it just felt like it was just seamless. Whereas, you know, Philip was always the blue-eyed boy. He missed age groups. He always played 2 years above. He was the boy who could play on a football pitch, a muddy football pitch in white trainers and still keep on his feet. You know, that's where Philip was. He sort of, you know, flashed through. Where Gary, he had a little bit of a struggle coming through. You know, he was never really in the 11 as he started to grow up, you know, but he had a really good hard work ethic. So it sort of changed the way we went our avenues. And my dad always said that to us. He went, you know, you have to take every opportunity you can, and that your road might be different to someone else's, and it's your choice to do that. But also, you know, people respect the work ethic and how hard you work. And I look now at what my dad did at the time. He was a long distance lorry driver. You know, he used to get up at 2 a.m, drive long hours, you know, work sometimes away all week. My mum, you know, was out working, trying to manage 3 kids on her own. And you just think, like, the life we've been brought up with, it felt that energy, work ethic were part of our makeup.
I mean, that's incredible. Like, what a supportive environment to grow up in. And I really respect the fact that you didn't really at any point feel like you were competing against your brothers. It was that kind of harmonious, overall supportive environment that you could.
That's in netball and football, that, you know, we didn't compete.
Oh,
we competed for the front seat in the car every time we went out.
I mean, I'd expect nothing less from the sporting sibling rivalry, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine Monopoly in your house was probably intense.
Banned.
Yeah. Even, do you know what? You don't need a game around our table. I went out for a meal with my family last night, and it's just intense. It's just an intense place to be.
I love that though. Like, how character building is that? I think that's incredible. And we know as well, like, obviously before your coaching days, you also made 81 appearances as a player for England between 1996 and 2008. And then you took over as head coach of Team Northumbria in 2011 before moving back to Manchester Thunder and winning titles in 2012 and 2014. When you look back on those days now, how do you reflect on what you were like as a coach in those early years?
Do you know, I had to do a speech the other week about, was I a natural leader? And I look back and I think I was never really the captain of a team or the co-captain, but I was head girl of my school. So when you look at that, you think, actually, I did have some natural leadership coming through. It was interesting. I never, when I was playing, coaching was just part of a way of earning money, extra money through, you know, picking up when I was at home from international duty, or, you know, studying at uni or working. It was a way of just picking up a few extra bob here and there. But I had a really good mentor in Marion Lofthouse, and when I was younger, she used to make a few of us. There was Karen Atkinson, Anna Carter, and then a few others who are coaching now, come out to the high performance sessions, which basically were all the best people in the Northwest from a young age group used to come together. She used to make me come out to these and do my coaching. And then she made me do my level 1. Then she made me do my level 2. And then through that, she didn't make me, but it felt like she was pushing me in that direction, you know. But I just saw it as a means of earning extra money, and that was voluntary. To be fair, that was voluntary. It was probably the other stuff that I got a little bit more paid for. And as I was going, she then directed me into taking an under-19 national team to, it was a club, the YW club team, to the major competition, and we actually won it that year. And there was one highlight in the game where we were down, particularly in this match, and we had a tall girl at goal shooter. She's called Natalie Woolley. Shout out to her. And I was like, oh, what we're going to do? You know, I need something. We can't get the ball down and stuff like that. And Marion turned around and said, and she didn't tell me what to do. What she said is she directed me, you know, what you're seeing in the game, what do we need at this point? And I made a change in that game. I moved Natalie Woolley out to goal attack. And we actually won that final. We won the national clubs under-19s in my first ever league. And I thought, she taught me a lot through that particular. But I think that's something that we miss as coaches now. We get led a lot in, some of our qualifications, but we don't get led a lot in some of the game scenarios. Are you able to make your own mistakes? Is someone just telling you what to do, or are they guiding you through some of your decision making? And I think that has sort of come through my decisions as I've come up. So when I took time out, when I finished playing my career, I got offered a job with Anna Carter up at Leeds Met Carnegie. And that was really good there because I took on a young side, an NPL side. And for me, I need to learn my role. I think a lot of the times is you can come in and you think, coaching, playing doesn't reflect coaching, big decisions, And I've got grounded for 7 years, a long time before that, doing a lot of stuff with Marion. But this was my first team and I made some really bad mistakes through there. I learned a lot about dealing with people. I learned a lot about dealing with coaches. I learned a lot from watching, the Super League franchise run and stuff. And I think that sometimes what I did is I spent 3 years probably learning about coaching and practices and stuff like that. But I also did other things as well, because someone also said to me, if you want to be a good coach, and it's not something I really wanted to push myself into, but if you really want to be a good coach, you've got to be able to deal with a lot of people within it. So it's good to have a holistic background. So I went away and did another degree. So I did a sports science nutrition. I also went and did my strength and conditioning qualification. And I felt that I started to learn a lot. I did a rehabilitation stint out in America. I just started to learn a lot from different people and environments. And in that particular environment as well, there were some of the best coaches now. If you think about Graham Potter at Chelsea, he was in that environment at the time. There was Vinny, who was head of badminton. There was James Ross, who was head of hockey. Anna Carter, Andy Siddle. There was some great all over sports. And I learned probably some really great coaching insights during that particular 3 years, which was really valuable. And Simon Loftus, I have to say him as well, volleyball.
I mean, I think that's pretty remarkable for someone who never had a specific ambition to be like an elite head coach, to then go on that journey and to be so successful at it. And when at your time at Manchester Thunder, that was such an era of dominance at that time for the franchise. What do you think was some of the contributing factors that led to that level of success at that time? What was in and around the environment?
At Manchester Thunder? I think the Northwest has always been such a strong region. And, you think about the strong coaches that have come out of the Northwest. You look at Sarah Bateman Francis, you look at Karen Atkinson, you look at Karen Gregg, Anna Carter. There's some great coaches that have come out of the Northwest, but there's also been some great players. And when I stepped into the Manchester Thunder role, previously come from the team Northumbria, where they were a franchise who were struggling. They were concurrently at the bottom of the table. They hadn't really won. And that was my first year in coaching. And I felt that was a really good step for me, because I needed to know what it took to win. I needed to know to take a group of players that were not experienced. We didn't have the best players in the league. It was hard to recruit players to Newcastle, so on and so on. So that for me was a real learning in my particular role. And that year we got the team up to, I think we finished 6th in the table, which was a real positive for the franchise. So when I moved down to Manchester Thunder, they were also a team that, very successful, had, highly talented people. They struggled. The thing I felt they struggled is they had a really strong youth base, but it was about that progression from youth to senior netball. They, you saw the likes of us come through and Jade Clark and Sarah, but there was a real stopping gap about how we, get them kids into that. And Mike Greenwood had done an awesome job bringing Northwest Netball onto the map. And obviously Manchester Thunder with Debbie Hallis, they took over the franchise. They started to make it more professional. So when I got offered that role, they were in a situation where they always come into that. They almost finished in 4th place. They managed to get into that playoff position, but weren't able to take that next step, like break the glass ceiling, get into that final. So that was really positive for me. So the first year I was in, I think for me, I really like to put a jigsaw together. I'm one of them that, where is our key where do we need to, build on that? And we brought in Janelle Lawson because at the time we were really struggling for an experienced goal attack. Karen Gregg was still playing at that time as a shooter. So we had quite an experienced shooting end. But then the rest of the court was filled of youngsters. And then the next experienced player was obviously Sarah Bayman at that time in that middle. But what it was is I started to filter out some of the players and shake up the environment, get rid, put in. And what we did is we started to form an ethos within that team of winning. What do we take to win? So we brought in PA sessions, we brought in, strength and conditioning sessions, and we were on a very limited budget. And I think one thing that people say to me is when, at Manchester Thunder, they don't have a lot of money. But what they do is they utilise their resources really well. So we get very well supported from the universities, and I'm quite good at getting things for free as well. So at the time,
it's a great skill.
Trying to get things out of people. But that's what you have to do, isn't it, at that particular level? So what we did is I started to take the franchise from not only doing twice a week training, Tuesday and Thursday, and they started to have a few more responsibilities, and it wasn't big. We started to form pod sessions around the area. So we accessed people like Helen Housby coming from Carlisle. So we were able to link into more talented athletes around the area. And, before we knew it, we started to be a little bit more of a threat within the Super League. And the 5-year plan, you almost put like a plan in place, and it was a 5-year plan at that particular time that we'd win the Super League in year 5. And when you look back on that 5-year reign, Dan Ryan took that 5th year and he got into the final that year. Obviously didn't win it, but the year before, we won it in year 1, and I think we won it in year 3, was it? And then 4, we missed out. When I got the England job, I do think that had a little bit of an impact, but we only lost 1 game that year, which was the semi-final, which is a shame, isn't it? When you look back, it's so cruel. And then obviously Dan Ryan took him into the final the year after and was unable to win it. But now I feel that Karen Gregg now has progressed through that. And I think one of the things for me was through that particular reign, it was about bringing through coaches who were going to take over my particular role. So at the time we had Shauna Forbes, who's now the head of Pathway in England Netball. So she was my Thunder youth coach, head coach down at the bottoms, like 12s and 13s. And, I'm so pleased that she's progressed to where she is now. Karen Gregg now is one of the threatening head coaches in the National Super League. So, the key was about also bringing them through as well. And I think that was real positive through my particular reign.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned there about learning how to win. I think that's so important because ultimately at the end of the day, there's a lot of benefits that come with playing sport and all of that sort of thing, but you are there to win. That's the whole point of it, is about coming out with that success at the end of it. And you mentioned there about taking over the England coach job. And when you took over, it was actually initially as an interim coach after the disastrous Glasgow Commonwealth Games where England finished 4th. And after winning bronze at the World Cup the following year, your role was made permanent. So can you recall and talk us through the moment when you were told that you would be able to continue to lead England?
Yeah, I think when they offered me the England role, if you think about where you want to be when I was kneeling behind the bench when I was about 13-year-old watching England play at the AO Arena, my dream was to be one of them players on that pitch. So when you start coaching, the England role felt so far away from me at that particular time. And I wanted to do so much more. I wanted to go to Australia and coach. I wanted to learn from a lot more experienced coaches. But when I was given the role, it as my dad said, it's an opportunity and you may only ever get that once. And I feel that I took that opportunity at a particular time when it was offered. But that first year was not the easiest time. Obviously, the way I went into the role in the interim made my job very, very difficult, just from many makeups of what happened during that particular period. There also was the struggle of obviously trying to get the players on board. What was I wanting to do in the programme? And yeah, that I'm going to say that's probably not one time that is probably one of the difficult, most, the first year and a half in the England role was probably the toughest time of my whole career in coaching.
Wow. Yeah. And then when you work, you're asked to continue on, Did you ever think, oh, I've had enough of this?
No. The only time, and it makes me quite emotional now that I had to obviously give up that job, was because obviously I had a child. I wanted a child. But at no point during that particular role did I want to give up at times. I think everyone gets flashes of that in their job when the things are really, really tough. And you go back to your family, you think, why am I putting myself through this? Why, you know, when I go to a supermarket and I'm checking myself out, I'm thinking this role is so simple. You know what I mean? I'm just clicking, my items through. And, the England coach role, you go into an environment, anyone who goes into that role, I see it like a dartboard. You have such a huge circle of friends, you have a huge circle of people who you can connect with. And then you go into that England role and you become the bullseye, and it's just one dart in that balls. And you start to narrow down your environment, you start to become a lot more isolated. You don't trust that many people. You can't trust that many people, and you only trust the people that give you probably the best advice or best support at that particular time. So was there huge struggles? Of course, there was huge struggles during that particular first year and a half. The thing for me is I wanted to make a difference. And this wasn't coming in to be the hero. I'd been playing for England netball since I was 16-year-old. I'd had some of the best coaches, the best personnel, Liz Nichol. I can only name a few, Wai Tamaro, Lynn Gunson, Mary Beardwood. I'd had some absolute amazing people who I'd been surrounded by. And all the time, every single person that had stepped into a role wanted to make a difference in England netball. And what we'd seen is over that particular time, there'd been some strengths, there'd been some mistakes and whatever. And I'd seen what it took to be the best. I'd played out in Australia for a year. They were moving towards that more professional. Their players woke up every single day wanting to be a netballer. And it was interesting, I can mention this probably now, as I sat down with Jo Harton in a coffee shop in that first year when I'd been made. It was a wintry day and we're sat at Euston in this coffee shop. And she turned around and she said, Tracey, when I come home, I want to be a professional netballer. When I come here, I have to work. If I'm not out in Australia, I have to come home, I have to find coaching jobs, I have to do that. But I'm a professional netballer. And I just remember this conversation with her and I thought, you're right. I've grown up with Alex Ferguson as someone who's been key in my brother's lives. I've been out, my brother signed that contract at 14. That was to make a career decision for the rest of their lives. I look at girls now, I look at my nieces who want to be professional netballers. That wasn't even a choice. It wasn't even something that come out of my mouth. And I thought, that's where I want to take netball. That's where I want to do this. I want to make, the professional. And Sarah Simonton, Jo Adams were so brilliant in this. They'd been in professional sports. They'd been in Olympic sports. They'd seen where the grass grew, and they were so on board with that. And to have that team around me at that particular time to do that was such a positive. And yet there were times when before I fell asleep at night, I'm like, why am I doing this? But when I woke up in the morning, I knew why I was doing it. And that was to make a better life for women's sport, make a better life for netball, but also give me as a 8-year-old girl something to aspire to be.
I've got like literal chills.
I was going to say the same. I mean, I've actually got goosebumps there from what you're saying, because it's undoubtedly the case that you've had that impact. Like winning gold, on the Gold Coast changed people's lives. It's what got me into netball, and now I'm doing a podcast. And it's honestly just been so impactful. And I think hearing the passion that you put into it, and also knowing the context of everything that was going on around you at the time. We know that your father very sadly suffered a heart attack in Sydney on the eve of the Netball World Cup, and you had challenges later on with fertility and miscarriage very sadly at the Gold Coast. And to know that you were able to keep focused and keep resilient throughout that period is so inspiring. And genuinely, I think that you should be really celebrated for that. And how would you say that you kept going through all of those ups and downs and through all the coaching kind of roller coaster?
I had a team that wanted to win. I had a staff who were very supportive. I look at England Roses now and I think every single one of them girls want to win. They want to be better. They want to be the best. I look at the coaches as well. They want to be the best. They want to take England netball to that next level. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that anybody that I have met within that program that doesn't want to do that. And people can be blinded by that, but I've been around that group, around that association. The thing that we limit is, and we can harp on about that, is we lack the amount of funding to be able to be the best. You know, if I can only compare myself when Philip was head of, you know, the Lionesses. For every one member, he had 4 members of staff. And I know that's a bigger cohort of group, but I'm talking everywhere within the organisation. I'm talking pay levels. Pay levels are so different. We have a high turnover of staff at England Netball. So you get a good staff member and you lose them to another sport. It's heart-wrenching. But these are people who are embedded in England Netball. They would work within netball. You've seen Liz Nichol, you know, she started in England Netball, she's gone to other places, she's come back into our sport. And that for me, is, you know, it's so heartwarming. There's people in netball who are never ever going to leave netball, but they have to, because financially they have to do that. And we're an association who are trying to strive. I know every single, like the CEO, Fran, everyone are really trying to strive to make England better, England netball better, and to provide more income that we can make the whole of netball better. And my franchise, I see it on a daily basis, you know, with David Jennings and Debbie Hallis in Manchester Thunder. They're always trying to provide, you know, more money, more opportunities, more program. I'm pushing the program on and they never say no. And I think there's not one person that was doing that. So it's difficult to sit back knowing you've been in that club system, you've been in that international system, to think that that's not what every single person is striving to do, because that's what every person is striving to do within England Netball.
And I think you see that globally as well. It's not just within England Netball. Like, take Jamaica as the prime example, managing to get silver at Commonwealth Games last year. And, you know, talking to Rob Wright in one of the post-match interviews afterwards, who was saying that they had Team Jamaica, as in the entire, every sport competing for Jamaica, had one physio that they were sharing across all of their sports. And yet with such few resources, they were still able to make history and take silver in the same way that we are able to make history and take gold with, you know, a small amount of resources as well. And I think that's testament to not only the talent of the likes of yourselves, Connie Francis, Rob Wright, but also the perseverance and that never say die attitude that we have within the setup.
But it's also realising what you've got and what you need to do. If you look at the high percentage of them Jamaican players, and even in the England players, and even myself now, I'm moving to Australia to coach in the best league in the what's perceived as the best league in the world, because I want to be better. I can't stop my career with England Roses, go away, have a baby, and think that I am even anywhere near ready to coach at that level again, like without putting in the groundwork. That's what we expect our players to do. So when you look at Shamira Sterling and hello, Tanya Wilson, who I'll be looking at next Friday, by the way, you know, they know to get Jamaica to be the best in the world and provide more opportunities for the team, they have to take that next step. So they've moved to a professional league where they're paid. You know, you've seen that probably all of the South African team have now, you know, landed in the UK. But there's also coaches, you know, Sarah Francis Bayman has now gone to Queensland Firebirds. I'm now making the step. So what we're saying is we want our players to be better. So they have to provide better opportunities. They have to train better. They have to keep improving. But we also expect our coaches to be able to do the same. So I can't turn around to a player and be, you've got to be better. And I'm sat in a cozy little comfy armchair at home, not trying to be better. So I think from my perspective, they've realised what it takes to win, you know, and that is crucial. It is crucial in being able to put yourself out against the best every single way, be in that environment, train with better coaching teams. You know, I went out to Adelaide before Christmas for 5 weeks, and it was like being in a Roses program again. Every day I woke up doing something I loved. At home, I don't do that. I love Manchester Thunder, but I go out very sporadically. and then I have to find an income from other sources. That's the way it is in England netball. And, we're striving to be better, but we're just not quite there. So they have 8 Roses programs. So everyone is a Jess in, Jess wakes up every day and does a sport she loves and coaches every single day. There's not many jobs that can do that because you don't have the access to the players because they're working, they're studying and so on and so on. So I think for me, if you step out of something, you've got to be better and you've got to put yourself forward. It's more difficult for me now. I'm not going to say when you're pulling a tribe along with you, it's a lot harder to make them decisions, but it's a decision that my family know I really want to do. And this is the year to do it.
And honestly, we can't wait to see the impact of you going out to Adelaide Thunderbirds, and we're just honestly so excited. And we know that obviously you were with Tanya Obbs before. She was within the Roses setup when you were head coach, and similarly with your role in Manchester Thunder last year, you were back working with Karen Gregg, who you've got a long-standing relationship with. And I think when it comes to these high performance environments and analysing games and matches, etc., we talk so much around the connections and relationships on court. But I think sometimes the coaching connections and relationships are almost overlooked a little bit. So how important to you are these connections and these relationships between coaching staff?
You wouldn't believe. And I've come through different experiences and different people. You need different people at different times. So I take Manchester Thunder, for example. I'd just had a baby. We'd come out of COVID and I stepped back into, and I rung Karen Gregg up and I said, can I come and I'm ready to come back into netball. Can I come and work with you? And, this is coming in as an assistant coach. This is from someone who has been a leader. And I remember someone saying to me before that you couldn't be an assistant coach. And it takes some learning, to step back, let other people take the lead. But what I learned so much about myself. But also I had Gabrielle Towell, who, when I was head coach at Manchester Thunder, she was my head NPL coach who I'd worked very closely with on developing some of our pathway in youth. So I was surrounded by 2 people who I trusted, who had my back, who would speak honestly to me, pipe down, Tracey, do this, do that. But also they enabled me to be a really good assistant coach, which, I'm hoping when I go out to Australia, I'll be able to work with Kathy Fellows and Tanya Obbs in the same way. So they've given me that experience. When I was in the England team, it was different. My bucket was probably full a lot. I was in a very pressurized environment. I was getting a lot of impact from external environments and so on. So the team I needed around me was very specialised. So when I brought Tanya Obbs into it, she brought out that honesty and respectful side of me. She could tell me, she could speak to me quite honestly that some other people couldn't do. She made me laugh when I needed to, because that's really important for my character and sense. But also Colette Thompson, she was there to really assist me in some of my technical and tactical stuff that I really needed, that you just don't have time to do as a head coach. But I trusted that she would work on the path that I wanted to do. So you sort of bring together a team that have different impacts on you and experiences, and then different experiences are important at different opportunities. I couldn't have someone who was very much like me, because that would just be too much, particularly in a head coach role, someone who's going into battle with me all the time. That just wouldn't work for me. I need someone who can bring out my character and stuff. And I felt that during my time, I've put together some really, really good coaches. And like I say, Karen was my assistant at Manchester Thunder before I left to go to the England job. And then that role reversed. So it's really good now that the roles reversed between me and Tanya, because what it does is it enables me to concentrate on my coaching, and I don't have to deal with anything else, which, do you know what, I really love coaching, and something that can get taken away from you sometimes in leadership positions.
And I think, like, just listening to you talk and the roll call of names and coaches that you've worked with, like,
it's like a who's who of netball.
It literally it's so incredible, and all the different ways that those people have impacted you and you've impacted them, and in turn you've all impacted netball. It's just phenomenal. And I think, if we go back to your reign within England, you obviously placed third in the Netball World Cup in 2019. And it was at that point that you then took the decision to step away from the role as head coach. And we read in an article that it wasn't part of your plan, but with the fertility struggles that you were having at the time, you decided to focus on starting your family. And I think it's one of the most impossible choices and something that many women have to struggle with on a daily basis. Were you ever concerned that by stepping away from such a phenomenal role that you wouldn't then have the opportunity to return to that role or to that similar level ever again?
Of course. But, when I look, there's so many role models. Look at Norma Plummer and how old she is. She's 70 odd year old. She'd hate me saying that.
78, I think.
Yeah.
78-year-old, I'm 46. So, that's 30 years. I only had one opportunity. Like my dad said, you only have one opportunity and you've got to take it. I'd actually made the decision to step away from the role in March. And Joe Adams and Sarah Simonson were very, very good in the reason why I wanted to step away from the role. And it was the best secret that's ever happened in netball, because secrets get out so much. And we only decided to announce it because we started to get fear factor that actually that would disclose away from the girls at the World Cup. So we actually, told the girls first, then made the announcement straight after that. They were so supportive, and they offered me other opportunities. But I knew I'm such an intense person. And I felt that I couldn't concentrate on having a family because it meant that I missed the next event or I missed the training session. And I feel that when you're in a leadership role, you've got to do what your team do and more. And if I wasn't there, that for me didn't sit well with me. When you commit to something wholeheartedly. And, I'm not, this probably looks really negative to the ladies who take 12 months off work, that I'd come to a point where I'd been coaching a group of girls that needed the best, and they needed that best. They needed the best opportunity to go into the next World Cup and the Commonwealth Games. And I didn't know how long it was going to take me to have a baby. I didn't know how long I would feel about leaving my baby at home and coming back to work. And that uncertainty, I didn't want to put in anybody's mind. This was a group of players who wanted to win, who wanted to repetitively keep winning, who wanted to back up medals. They needed the best. They needed the best support. They needed the best coaching. And to put uncertainty into their minds at that particular time, that was I think that would have been very selfish of me. And to do that to the organisation, it just wasn't. I also knew that if I always had that job in my background, would I wholeheartedly have stepped back fully? I'm a very black and white person. I think I needed the break. And, I found out I was pregnant before I made the announcement and before I told the girls. But from my history, my obviously physical history, I didn't know if that was actually going to, go to a long-term pregnancy. And some people say it potentially impacted the World Cup and our result on it. But every day we woke up as a team wanting to win. I don't think there was one day, even the New Zealand, we did not play well in that New Zealand game. And when you look at it, what did we lose by 1-2 goals?
Yeah.
And we were in the game, we were up at half-time, that was probably one of the best New Zealand sides I'd seen in a long time that Nolene had put together. That we weren't playing their beating. They'd brought in all the best players who we hadn't played during that cycle. They'd come in particularly for that World Cup. So we lost by 2 goals. Like, it was upsetting, but during that competition, we'd beat Jamaica, we'd beat South Africa twice, we beat New Zealand. The run up into that final was probably one of the toughest I'd ever faced as an England coach. To get to that World Cup final was one of the toughest, and we'd have had to have beaten Australia as well. So we lost 1 game in the whole of that competition. And in a way, it does define you because you come out with bronze medal, which people expect England to be in. But I actually think there was not one day, we didn't wake up that day not wanting to win. And the difference in the team from that I saw was that we woke up the next day and we wanted to win again. And that for me was the difference in that particular team. That, we were gutted, we were heartbroken, we went away, we cried, we had a shout, but within hours we were waking up wanting to win. And I think that was the difference and I saw a difference shift in the team. And I said to him, it's the last time we're going to ever be together as a group, which we was, because these players would never go to another World Cup or Com Games, and I wouldn't be that coaching, and so on and so on. So that last game was, for us, probably that gold medal playoff that we weren't able to get into.
Yeah, and I remember so vividly watching that, and I remember the thought process that I had at the time of thinking, like, geez, the resilience that you guys have shown to go from such a heart-wrenching 2-goal loss to then come out and absolutely kill it in that bronze medal match. Like the mental shift and mindset from one to the other was truly phenomenal. And as a fan watching that, I had so much respect for everyone in and around the environment at that time. And obviously we've had the 2022 Commonwealth Games. We didn't medal, that is a fact. We came in 4th, and I personally feel like it's almost like a different vibe. It's a different energy in the camp now compared to 2018. But if we look ahead to World Cup this year, we need to put Commonwealth Games 2022 behind us. We need to look ahead. In your opinion, as someone who's now outside of the Roses environment, what do England need to do to put the failure, I suppose, it sounds a bit harsh, but the failure of Commonwealth Games last year behind them to go ahead and make history and try and get gold in World Cup?
I think there's been a lot of positives from this particular cycle. It's so tough bringing through the next generation of young players, but I do think that's been done very well over the last 3 years. When I set the Roses programme up back in, it was about, we'd had coaches in before who, come in, 4 years gone, we started another programme. That Roses programme now is bringing through the next generation. And I feel that has been done so well over the last cycle. And when you see some of the youngsters come through, but they're not just coming through dipping their toe in the water, they're coming through and playing full games against the best in the world and holding up that. And that is the professionalism of what the Roses programme's done and what Jess has done within that particular programme. We're bringing through the next generation, and that's what we have to do. Having been in that role, you have a process about what you want to do when you're setting up for the competition. So leading into that Commonwealth Games, the only thing I probably would have looked at was we took 3 very experienced defenders and 1 relatively middle of the road experienced defender. So when I look at the makeup of a team, you tend to you have about 5 experienced players, probably have about 3 or 4 who have been to one of World Cup Commonwealth Games. And then you want to blood through the next probably 3 players who are quite young. In the attack end, we had like Sophie DL, Sophie Drakeford-Lewis. In the mid-court, we had your Imogen Allison, who was your next blood. We didn't have another young one in that defensive end. So it's a difficult decision as a coach to go to that Commonwealth Games and go, well, okay then, what do we actually need going into here? Do we make a decision? And that had to be between Ebony Osoro-Brown or Stacey Francis-Bayman, because I feel that the other 2 couldn't have been dropped because of height and stuff, and do we take a Fran Williams who went to a World Cup the year, in 2019, or do we take a Fumi and just throw her in as an impact player to play minimal minutes, but just get an impact on court? So I think that probably could have been a decision that could have been potentially made. I also feel that during that particular cycle building up to the Commonwealth Games, we did have a backup wing attack, because that was Laura Malcolm. You'd seen she was the key wing attack when we'd beaten New Zealand in that, in the first ever time we'd beaten New Zealand in a test series. She was the key wing defence when we played against South Africa. And for me, centre was probably her 3rd choice position at international level. At club, she was outstanding at wing attack defence. She was being developed at wing attack at international level. Centre was probably the step down. And I think coming out of that Commonwealth Games, we lost. And I think that can impact a lot of decisions. When you lose, it's really hard to think. But things that we learned from that Commonwealth Games were that we didn't have a backup to Nat, because we felt that, Nat Metcalfe got blooded probably too much. She didn't have that time to rest and recuperate. And we were looking for obviously 2 defenders now, because obviously 2 had retired. So that would probably be my, as a coach, aim coming through this. So you obviously saw the likes of Fran Williams and Fumi have an outstanding test series out in Australia. And I feel that now we seem to be looking for a little bit more than what we were meant to be looking from Commonwealth Games, because I actually didn't think the centre position was a huge impact. I thought that Jade Clark, I think she did a really good experienced role there. Imogen Allison and Laura Malcolm were sharing that particular position. Were they established? Of course not. Like I say, I think that Imogen had played a whole season at Bath and done relatively well, but she obviously needs more experience in that position. So we've now come into an Australia series and a quad series where we're now looking for a wing attack, and we've involved 3 players within that. We've had Hannah Joseph, Elle MacDonald, Chelsea Pittman, and I don't know if that's confused a few matters. Now we're looking for a centre. So Jade Clark got relatively less court time. Laura Malcolm got no court time, who we'd been investing in. And then we started to obviously play Elle MacDonald a little bit in that particular role. So what we've done now, although we're bringing 3 players and we're trying to establish, we're now leading into a World Cup with a few unanswered questions, or Jess has got a few unanswered questions. And the certainty leading into Commonwealth Games was that Laura Malcolm was the wing attack, wing defence backup. And even Sophie Diel had done a little bit of a stint at wing attack, particularly in the Australia season, the quad. I thought she was outstanding in the last quarter against Australia. So now we're looking for a backup for that 3rd place and probably that defensive cover. I think we've just lost a bit of insight into what we actually need, because Nat Metcalfe is an outstanding wing attack, and Stacey Marenkovich was very, very clever in that series not to play Ash Barcelona. So I think for us now, we're in the confusion. I think that's where we're just lacking a little bit of, where we're going with this. We've seen 3 wing attacks that have played in different series, and people wanted to see more of an established 12 and more of an established 7, which in Jess's mind, she probably has it. But as probably from the outside, we're still unclear about who that is. And at the expense of, building into World Cup, you want to have established rhythms, styles, format, how you're going to play, who your best players, who your impact. And I just don't quite know if we've got that quite yet as an England team against the world's best, against Australia and New Zealand. Do I still think they can beat them? Yes, I do. But I think they've probably established their team probably a little bit better in that quad series than the England team, because we're still at the point of answering questions. And it's going to be a tough selection process for them coaches.
Yeah. And I actually feel, we were discussing the other day about who are our 12 for England for World Cup, and we genuinely could not pick the 12. Like, we do feel that we are in that era of confusion at the moment. And I think we came out of quad series with more questions potentially than when we went into it, from my perspective at least. But, anything can happen in 6 months' time. Bring on the World Cup and hopefully a gold for England for the very first time. But Tracey, we've taken up a lot of your time, so we're going to let you go. But thank you so, so much for coming on today and everything that you've shared with us. It's not easy to talk about such personal issues and even coaching as a whole, which is such a personal thing for some people, because you put so much of yourself out there. So for you to share that with us is really special. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Oh, what an amazing chat with Tracey Neville. I just love hearing from people like her who've really been through it and really been part of our game for such a long time, seen it progress, got to that very highest level, obviously coaching England, winning gold. It just gives you goosebumps hearing about all of those moments, doesn't it?
Well, like, quite literally, I almost had to put a dressing gown on during that, because I was just had so many goosebumps. My skin was just, it was incredible. I mean, for me, this was such a special interview because it was the Roses winning gold in 2018 that kind of got me into netball in the first place. So I hadn't really been interested in it since school. So it quite literally, no exaggeration, no word of a lie, changed my life. And so having the opportunity to chat to her was just so incredibly special. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as we did. So a big thank you for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We can't wait to bring you more netball chat and another super special guest next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you, and send in your 3-word summaries. We love seeing those. Yeah, we need to bring that back. So send those in. You can DM us or you can tweet us, whatever you like. You can send things to my house. I don't know. Go for it.
I mean, if they know where you live, I'll be slightly worried, but
oh yeah.
We'd also really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. Like it truly makes a big difference. If you enjoy listening to us, do let us know and spread the word of your netball pals. Just pop it in the team group chat, let people have a listen, and then hopefully we'll get more people involved and grow the netball family. And don't forget as well to take advantage of our exclusive discount with Lovell Netball by entering the code NETPOD15 at the checkout at lovellnetball.co.uk.
Do you know, I slipped over in my match on Saturday, Luce, and I looked at the bottom of my shoes and they need replacing. And I thought,
wow,
haha, I wonder where I can go. So
got
amazing.
You covered, mate.
Yeah. And Lucy G will be back at the Copy B hosting the Lucy B at the Copy G. Oh God, no, that's the wrong way around. Anyway, you're hosting Pulse versus Thunder on Saturday. So if you haven't got your tickets, there's actually really not that many tickets left. So move quickly if you want to go. And obviously there's plenty of people going to be there. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. And it's going to be on Sky if you're going to be watching from home like me.
Yeah, so excited for this one. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.